Hi there everyone, welcome along to another video up here in the loft with Weir Yard, and it's great to have your company. I hope I find you well. In today's video, it's something that I've been wanting to do a lot more regularly, but as it happens I've been so busy on other projects, but I have found time to do a little bit more work up here on Weir Yard, and I'm going to share that with you now in association with our channel sponsor Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and DCC accessories designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, and we've got a link to them in the description box down below if you want to check them out. But without further ado, it's a progress video on Weir Yard. What progress, you may ask? Well, come with me and I'm looking forward to showing you. What have I been up to? Well, you may have noticed in some of the more recent videos we've done a lot of how-to guides with things like static grass, foliage, that kind of thing, and I've been really getting into this, and it's to do with the new sponsor for the Monday Club, which is World Scenics, and they very kindly sent on over the static grass applicator and a whole lot of products to go with that. So I've had a play about with things like the clump foliage and also the static grass. Now, I've always said that, like, oh no, I don't need static grass, and I think there's a lot of people out there who view it as like, oh well, no, I'll manage without. Believe me, when you finally do get to play with a static grass applicator, you'll wonder what on earth you've been playing at for so long. Honestly, I was as big a skeptic as any, but I found this tool so easy to use. Arguably, it's easier than applying grass in the methods that I'd done before. Now, my preference is still to build up a base sort of ground level, not to kind of go in dry and build up from the baseboard, although apparently you can do that with the basing glue. I've actually used it to enliven the grass that's already on the layout up here to absolutely great effect, so can't recommend it more highly. I've just been using the layering spray and then just building up, so you're using that original ground cover as your base, and actually it looks superb when you do that. Now, some of the areas that I've done, I've gone in a big way onto, I refer to it as Jab-like Mountain, and the thing about that is effectively because what's in there is an awful lot of scrap offcuts of Jab-like. Using the methods that I've done in the past, one of the big areas that they've been really difficult to actually get great ground coverage on is slopes. The steeper the slope, the harder it is with the sort of sprinkle methods that I got to really make that look great. So I was never fully happy with the front steep face where the tunnel mouths are, and there's a lot of shots you'll see of that front face. It appears as one of the camera angles on the Monday Club as well. So it really is kind of one of the flagship views, as it were, of Weir Yard. And I did one pass with a static grass applicator, maybe 30 seconds, and it was quite clear that this transformed it. So even on what is actually probably about a 55 to 60 degree angle, very, very steep, it just effortlessly covered this, and it stuck, it's remained stuck. And what I'm going to be doing with this, I'm going to try a method to apply flowers. Now, World Scenics have sent me over a flower applicating kit, so I really want to have a play with that. I've had some real great success just with a small pack of red flower material and just sort of tappy over the final layer, and that's actually given a great effect. So I really want to see how the proper flower making kit really makes it stand out, and I think that it's going to give this air of meadow grass. So that is something for the future. But you'll see from the shots that I'm showing you now that Jab-like Mountain really does look more like it's got this covering of grass. You can't see the joins, you can't see the wrinkles as well. It was J cloth with PVA that I used for the ground cover, and then a quick coat of filler, where you end up with not so much folds, but like little ruts in that, sometimes that can be quite hard to effectively fill in. Not with the static grass applicator. That has worked incredibly well to cover over and smooth over a lot of that. But I'm really pleased with that front face. And what it's actually told me is that there's other areas up here on Weir Yard that I want to treat, namely embankment sides. I think this is great for that. Now, I've been using some scrap pieces of cardboard as kind of a mask, because one of the issues potentially is that when you apply static grass from the Pro Micro applicator that I've been using, it does cover quite a large area, and that means that if you don't want it to contaminate your ballast, contaminate your track, then you're going to have to cover the areas around. And I've just used some scrap cardboard to great effect for this. And that leads me nicely onto the next area that I've done. There's a gap in the, I'm just trying to think, it'd be the north end of the yard. It's very difficult. North and south mean nothing up here because it goes round in a circle, but notionally the north end of the yard. And I had a strip of grass that I did using my usual method. It looked kind of all right, but just a little bit too short and mundane. And I finally bit the bullet, and I screened up with a bit of cardboard. And then I built some trees as well, the usual method, using the Woodland Scenics method actually, that I've done a video on, a how-to guide. Again, this is another great product from Woodland Scenics with the clump foliage, the kind of tacky glue, and on top of that as well, the kind of posable plastic armatures. You know, it's a great combination. You can use it in accompaniment with other methods of doing trees, and I think that, you know, they all have equal merit, and actually having a mix and a variety of trees does add to a layout. So I built the last of those that I had. I think I had 3, maybe 4 armatures left. So I've used them as the main focal point, but then I've used the static grass applicator and gluing in some clump foliage and the little pack of red flowers as well, just tap, tap, tap over the top. And I think it's really improved this area quite a lot. Really pleased with it. It helps divide the main line off from the yard. It brings in an air of overgrownness of the yard, adds focal points, and I think that there's areas of Weir Yard which I wasn't fully happy with, and they felt like a big expanse of ballast. And what I do want to do is to kind of break up some of this ballast with strips of weeds and rough grass, and this has gone some way to start that process. So I'm quite pleased with this strip of how it's done, and this was kind of inspired by the how-to video that I did when I first got sent War World Scenics materials to review, and I did a small area by the signal box, and that actually turned out really, really well. I also did the embankment behind it. That's turned out reasonably well as well. Now, I can't get away from the fact that you'll have seen the Backscene. You see it now over my shoulder. This is the Backscene that Les has been doing, finally, after doing the Langdale Pikes area of the layout. Called that because, quite obviously, it's inspired by photographs of Langdale, actually taken from Sticklegill and Pavey Ark. The photograph that that's based on is taken from. I think that actually it might even be from the top of Pavey Ark. So, not an angle that you would have seen associated quite freely with trains, but nonetheless I thought it was really good, and I'm so pleased with what Les has managed to create there. But he's come back and done something even more special on the layout, and the big area is the bit which I refer to in the layout as Bertley, which is what you see behind me where I'm sat as I do this piece to camera. And I'm going to show you that much more closely now so that you can see it. But he's also done kind of sky scenes, and the sunset vista that he's done is really great. Now, there's a few little niggles caused by nothing to do with Les, but actually because this building that we're in was built in 1927, and in 1927 it appears that builders did not understand spirit levels, set squares, or such like. They just kind of, looks about right. So, and also the intervening nearly 100 years has meant that the building has twisted and settled over time. So what was perfectly straight doesn't fit on the purlin perfectly straight, because the purlin is slightly bowed. It's had nearly 100 years of gravity acting on it, so I guess that's to be expected. So I'm going to have to work on sorting out this one gap, but I'm going to show you that now. And let's start with the sunset. This is something a bit different, custom Backscene. Quite hard to put on. He did some N-gauge low relief buildings to give a sense of scale and distance. Not convinced that they work because of the angle that the roof slopes in at. But we can live with that. I'm going to build up bushes and stuff in front. In fact, actually, this is one of the embankment sides that I think will be massively improved by a static grass application. So that is on the cards in the future. But really actually quite pleased with what he's done. It was so difficult to actually fit in, but I've got that done now. And it's actually really nice to have a sky that's other than a kind of a blue little fluffy clouds sky. So really pleased with that. Moving further round, we've got a representation of, I think a Kearsley power station may have been the inspiration here, but you can just about make out a power station. Now this is just a picture that he's done straight onto the Backscene, and I personally think that this works a little bit better. Again, a little bit of gaps here and there which I need to resolve because the purlin is bowed. Nothing really I could do about that, but this is really actually improved this area moving along, and it kind of blends into Holcombe Moor, which is the inspiration. So we've got this sensation of hills at the bottom, and then behind the military establishment we've got Holcombe Tower just visible in the distance if you really go looking for it. Going back on this embankment just by the military establishment, you can see there's two trees that I built as part of a how-to video guide that I did as a favour for a magazine, and I'm not sure if that's gone up yet or will be going up, but the full guide to how these seagrass trees were made really quickly, really easily, no special tools required, no skill required. I will post a link to that at some point when I find out when they've put it up. But these trees of, waste not, want not, have gone in here, and I actually really quite like them. I've also added in a few extra of the, I call them bog brush trees, but they're kind of fairly cheap, reasonable trees actually from, I think it's K&M Trees, which is part of Pico. So these are under the Pico banner of products. And I had these spare from another location on the layout, which I'll be sharing with you later on in this video. And again, waste not, want not. So they've gone onto this embankment just to kind of build it up. And actually, at the back of the layout like this, they do work quite well. But what other areas have I worked on? Well, coming to the foreground, I'm going to have to move some of these wagons out. But I've got what are now sort of become, they started out as the DMU sidings, and they've moved on now to become engineers sidings, and actually got quite full. But I've used the static grass applicator from Warworld Scenics to build up the grass layer to make them look a bit more disused. Now I think it needs a little bit more work, but these tracks are perfectly usable by trains still, and I'm quite pleased with the effect that I've got. And actually a lot with the static grass applicator is all about experimentation, so I'm quite pleased with how this area has turned out. Now moving back round, this really is the main feature. This is the one which we've done the how-to guide stroke update video on a little bit of this. It's been featured in the Monday Club, but the Bertley Backscene is not actually based on Bertley, but it's because the layout is inspired by Tyne Yard. It just colloquially in my head became referred to as Bertley, because on Tyne Yard, that's what the town alongside actually is Bertley. But this Backscene blends quite nicely into the Langdale one. The detail on this is exquisite. And this, I think, is largely down to the fact that Les has worked onto a kind of high quality mounting card. And that's actually made the chalk drawing a lot more vibrant than it was when he did it straight to the Backscene for the Langdale area. But then as we move along, we've got a lot of low relief, almost flat relief buildings here that he salvaged from various sources. There's some of the old Pico Backscenes, super quick kits, Bachmann scene craft, a lot of seagrass trees, but then also moving into scale scenes. And what I really like on this end, this has become one of my favourite parts of the layout actually, where we had the retaining wall. What I'm really gratified to see that he's done is he's used these old Metcalfe and scale scene buildings and turned them into this tactile 3D effect. They are very flat. I don't think anywhere they're thicker than about 5mm. They really are quite thin because there was just no space for actual buildings. But the way he's done it makes it feel like there are actual buildings there, and I love it. Absolutely love the work that he's done. It's replaced some of the flat relief buildings which I salvaged from Trinity Road. And as we go right over into the corner where there's, I think it's actually a scale scenes kit, but built up as a 3D building. I didn't make this building, but the modeler who did, and then it got sold secondhand and came to my hands through that route. Whoever did build this has done an absolutely superb job, far better than I could have ever built. Also has lighting in. I've shown you that in a previous video. But alongside now we have these warehouses, and I love the way that they overshadow the tracks. And industrial buildings should make the trains feel small. Real industrial buildings are vast and they do dwarf railways. So by having this Backscene that he's built up, I think that it really does become almost, it was described to me by New Junction actually. He said, your Backscene is a game changer, and I very much do agree with him on this. That the aspect that we get, the view we get, is so changed for the better. I am forever in Les's debt for this area. It really, really is something that has massively improved the whole model. And the more you look at this Backscene, the more detail you'll find. Now, I've salvaged things like the people figures, phone booths, mailboxes and stuff from the old bits and pieces, the quite frankly rubbish Backscene that I'd been making up myself, and I've added them to the fore, which means that, you know, we get even more of a three-dimensional effect. All that's left now is to finish off the fencing to separate this goods yard stroke warehousing area from the main line. And I also want to have kind of security fencing going across the track, a gate, and actually make it so it can be opened and closed. Not necessarily remotely, although that might be an interesting project in time, but certainly this needs to be fenced off from the main layout. It would never be like that in real life. But as are these things, there's always bits and pieces left to do. I'm keeping my eye out for the suitable ratio kit, but they do seem to be hard to get at the moment. Track 2. But that's not all. That is not all of the work that I have been doing on Weir Yard. One of the other areas was I built an 009 diorama, and it's only small, maybe 10 inches by 8 inches. And I built this principally because Pico very kindly sent to me a bunch of 009 bug box, Festiniog Railway bug box coaches for review, and I suddenly thought, I've got nothing to show them off on, and I do like with the reviews to actually have a backdrop, to show them in a model rail environment, to show them off at their best. And in this case I didn't have that because I didn't have any 009 anywhere, but I did have a 10-inch length of 009 track from, I must have had it in my possession for around 20 years for a previous layout. We're talking Not my last layout, not the layout before that, but the one before that. I experimented with 009 scenically. Didn't really work, but I had this 10-inch piece of flexi track left, and that formed the basis for a nice little diorama. I used a lot of woodland scenics trees that I made using that same clump foliage method, but also wall world scenics and the static grass application. It really came together so well, so much so that I'm actually going to do a full how to build photo dioramas video in the future. That's a project I really want to do, building up to an 009 layout, like super minimum space. I need to find out from Pico actually what the minimum radius for their small England locomotives that should be coming. Q1 2021 I believe is the current envisaged delivery date, because I want to incorporate those with these bug box coaches and actually make a very minimum sized 009 layout scenic, and potentially take it to exhibitions, but ostensibly to prove that you can have a very small continuous run model railway. You don't need a lot of space. But this diorama, when it was done, used in that video, and I got to thinking, actually it seems a shame to then just shove this to one side, and I looked to incorporate it on Weir Yard. And funnily enough, this corner here, where the keyboards, the sound desk is kept, actually ended up being the only place where it would really fit. So I've done a whole piece on doing this. This is one area where I can show you the construction process. So I'm going to turn it over to the video that I recorded. This is the 009 diorama that I built as part of the review of the Pico Bug Box Festiniog coaches. I basically needed a small 009 piece of track, and I thought it would be nice to build up some scenery just to show the items off in a model-based environment. It is, as you can see, quite a small diorama. It just sits there on the seat, and my plan is, if I just unplug myself from the power, that actually I've made a start over here. This far corner, I've seen it in videos from time to time as trains go past. I've already started taking the scenery off, just got straight in there. And what I'm going to do is this area here, I'm going to build just a little bit of a frame to hold it, and then that diorama is going to place into here. I'm just scraping up the ground cover, which is the Gauge Master grass mat, and I think it's going to come together actually quite nicely. Essentially I'm going to incorporate the diorama into the layout. It's just too nice to put on a shelf and forget about, so that's the plan. And ultimately as well, I think I'll probably do another diorama build and actually film all of the stages that go into making that, because I think that would be an interesting video in its own right. But I've got a little bit of Star Trek on the screen over there, just to keep me company as I transform this area here, which was, I remember being really proud of it when I built it, and now it's just a little bit naff. So this will go some way just to upgrade some of the scenery, and it's what you'll probably find yourself doing over time, just rejuvenating various areas. I mean, as you can see, the back scene behind rejuvenated a lot of the back, so this is going to put a little something in at the front. So I'm going to crack on and see where I get to. You can see here I've added a little bit of a frame in the corner just to hold and secure the diorama where it's going to sit. It'll just be glued down. I've scraped back the grass mat that was put in there. I think, looking back, I was just trying to cover the area as fast as possible, and sometimes it shows. If you work too quickly, then you end up coming back to improve an area afterwards, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but certainly, yeah, I can completely understand when people take a long time getting everything perfect first time. Here, my aim is to just improve as I go along. So I've used scrap wood. This is literally just offcuts from various different projects, bits of wood salvaged from elsewhere, glued and screwed in place, and I'm now going to trial fit the diorama in place. And here we are, finally finished. Done some static grass work, so you can see this. You can't really see a join. That's the whole point of this, blending it into the already existing scenery. What really helps is the Warworld Scenic Static Grass applicator that I was kindly sent by Warworld Scenics. And as you can see, it really does make blending these dioramas into a main layout so much easier. I've also used some scrap pieces of the Gauge Master grass mat just to tidy up the ends here. The staples will pull out once the glue is set, should I so choose. But it just neatens up the end and hides some of that polystyrene that was still visible from when I actually built the diorama, and the same round here as well. And it just makes things nice and neat. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. That's about all I've got from up here on Weir Yard. It's, as you can see, there's a lot of little bits been going on. And that's the thing with model railways. They're never truly finished. And what you will find is that you will find little areas that you can detail, that you can do. And also, as was the case with that 009 diorama, you can redo areas, come back and do them at a later date. And certainly I've found the Warworld Scenic Static Grass applicator has been great for that, because some of the areas that I wasn't fully happy with, I can now safely say that I am. And I didn't actually have to rip them out. I just simply added that extra scenic layer to them, and it made all the difference. But I hope you found this update video enjoyable to watch. I really enjoyed taking you on a tour of all the new stuff that I've been doing up here on Weir Yard. I know I haven't been doing anywhere near as much as I used to when I was building this. I was really, every week I had so much to show you guys. But, you know, it's reached a point where I'm really actually quite happy with what I've got. I will tinker with it, but there's not really any major new development. Certainly as far as track laying is concerned, I don't envisage even the fiddle yard area getting expanded. Although I will say to you, I have actually added a light down in the fiddle yard area, and that's made a huge difference, believe me, for actually just being able to see what's down there. And having a rummage in just effectively just winding some of the sidings, the full lines of stuff out, I found a few coaches that I was wondering what I'd done with them, so that's been great. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's given you some inspirational ideas for your own layout. I'd love to hear from you. Post a comment down below. Tell me all about your modelling projects. Always love to hear from you guys. And I do read all the comments, even if I'm not able to answer them all. But this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying I hope you've really enjoyed this look through the progress on Weir Yard. And really, really important, don't forget to tickle the like button, and you can support the channel very much by sharing this video to let as many people as possible know about Weir Yard and the work that I've been doing, not just on this layout, but the other projects as well. And stay tuned to this channel, because we'll have more of the great content that you know and love. And until next time, you take really good care of yourself. This is me, Jenny Kirk, saying bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon. And an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Alan, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Judge Mortis, Gary Lewis, and David Quinn. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.